Welcome back to Who's Helping You Heal. Let's be real. The holidays don't always land easy for people. Some years it feels joyful, some years it feels heavy, lonely, and of course, expensive. If you're carrying anxiety, grief, or pressure this season, you're not the only one. I asked my friend and therapist, Miss Daisy Rios, to sit with us, slow this down, and talk honestly about what the holidays bring up for us. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome back, everybody. We are back on the Who's Helping You Heal channel. And, we're right around the holiday season. And I don't know about you, but how many of us feeling like the holidays are either giving us fear, giving us anxiety, making us numb, making us isolate ourselves, making us worry about finances, all that stuff, just pile it on top of each other. If you are feeling that way, yeah, this session is for you. I wanted to bring Miss Daisy, the therapist from Chicago, and a dear friend of mine in the building. So thank you, Miss Daisy, for coming back. Don't give you that camp clap. And it's been a minute since we recorded. How have you been?
Good. I'm doing good, just trucking along, getting things done, doing well. Thank you for having me.
For sure. It's always a blessing to have you on our platform because you always drop the gems. And this one, as you heard me say, and me and you had some conversations like this in the past, but really trying to bring it to the forefront of just kind of holiday, all the fear of buying presents and just living the holiday to that degree, but also some of the things that follow us from the past,
Mhm.
from our childhood, from situations that might have happened 5 years ago, right? And really wanting you to come in, kind of share with us some thoughts, maybe some tangible resources for our people. So first off the cuff, guess what are you thinking about this theme? I know you're nodding your head off. It resonates for you. What's your first thoughts when I brought you into the room for this theme?
I mean, I think about how this topic is so important because there can be such an isolation in this feeling, right? The feeling of the holidays. Like it's not a good space for a lot of people. So there's a lot of isolation. It kind of think about how um everybody has their well wishes and wants to say like I hope you enjoy the holidays. I hope I hope you have a good time with your family, and that's not what it is for a lot of people, right? It's kind of like I wish it would adopt the same thinking that the education system is adopting, where you shouldn't ask kids like what fun things did they do on their summer break, because summer break is not always fun for kids, right? um so sometimes holidays is not always fun either.
Yeah, you're so right. It's the painting of wide brushes of people just thinking like everybody's gonna be able to kick it and have all this amazing time for the holidays and the resources to do so. It kind of even, I think of like, the holiday that just passed, right? Turkey Day. And folks saying that same thing. Oh, enjoy your Thanksgiving. And I'm like, well, there's folks out there who are living off a couple cans of food,
Mhm.
right? And don't even have the resources. So yes, spot on that one. In terms of like just the extravaganza of the holiday, right? The the expenditures, the pressure of keeping up with the Joneses, the pressure of parents wanting to provide, right? The pressure of children wanting certain things, and some children being humble enough to say, "Oh, my family ain't got this enough," so not asking and pulling back. The ones that don't get mentioned much, right? And then you have obviously the children who just want because it's part of that extravaganza. How do we, I guess for the folks who might be in that whirlwind of that bullshit, that materialism, I'm gonna say it, you don't have to, Daisy, right? All that bullshit that wraps around us around this holiday. I guess what is the resource in that one for someone to be like not checking fully into it where they lose themselves in it and get wrapped up in that whirlwind?
Yeah, I mean, the holidays in itself sets a really high bar. So like the expectations are realistic for some, but not realistic for most, right? So when we think about really providing our kids with more than what we had, or better than what we had. Like there's parents out there that are really taking on a lot of stress in order to see their kids have that moment, right? That smile when they open up their present, right? And there's just a lot that goes into that. I think about my mom when she was raising three of us by herself, and like the lengths that she went to get that smile from us and that temporary happiness from us, right? But it put her in a very in a position, right, where now she has to like pay all these bills and wonder how that's going to work with a job where she can't make more money, right? There's a ceiling, right? And she's already at that ceiling. So I just think about like how can we define that for our kids differently from the very beginning, right? So we think about like all the screen time and the electronics and the PlayStations and the everything, right? But how are we like engaging with our kids to show them those other things, right?
Mm.
Um, or are we okay with that that unrealistic like expectation that the holidays brings because it gives us as parents a little bit of relief, right? Like if my kids playing video games for 2 hours every night, that's 2 hours I can get back for myself. Or so there's a lot of like respite that parents need also. And then that the expectation of the holidays and buying all these luxurious gifts might provide opportunity for that respite, if that makes sense.
For
um
sure.
there's
For
just so
sure.
much to that.
Why do you feel boundaries are so hard to be kept during the holiday season, right? Like, why are they, why is it that we don't there's so many other times of the year where we can respect the boundaries and say, all right, I just don't have it, right? But this season, almost those boundaries out the window. People be like, oh, because I know in one way as a parent, and I've lived in that space where I'm like, I can easily justify, right? Putting something on my credit card to buy a present, right? I can easily because the spirit of it, the motion of it, right? The Jones, right? So
Yeah.
I guess to that degree, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I've done that too, right? Just to see that happiness from my daughter, right? I think we all have crossed that at some point. I think when it comes to boundaries is more going to like I think quality and quantity, right? So like are we buying one thing that we know is going to nurture our child, or are we looking at a whole bunch of things? Um I don't know. I think wanting is a learned behavior. So I think it goes back to like parents feeling comfortable enough to put boundaries on their children from the beginning, right? So like, do they need one video game or do they need five?
Mm.
I don't know. They're like $60 to $100, right? So like how many do they really need? I don't know. That's a hard question because it creates a lot of discomfort for parents because the holidays, like the gift giving kindness is tied to a person's like worth almost as a parent, right? So like if I don't do this, I must not be a good parent because
Mhm.
I'm hearing all these things come up and I'm just disappointing them. So there's a lot of fear with like how someone is going to be perceived. And boundaries, regardless of how they're laid out or who they're placed upon, creates discomfort.
Yeah, and it's almost a little bit of like, and I felt this, in my younger parent years, a little bit of self-measurement, right? You measuring yourself to others, it's that comparison of joy, right? It's thief of joy, all that good stuff. And yeah, you send your children to school, and it's one of those. It's all that challenge, but it seems to like if we're looking at it in an analytics point, and it's the spike that goes up that says, oh, it's spiking up, something's going on. I feel like December just does that for folks. And you see it, back in the day when you had your Black Fridays before all the holidays, or you just see all these sales going on and people absolutely going nuts, right? And
Yes.
and there's the folks who just maybe even separate themselves from the holiday a little bit, right? And they don't live that normal section that everybody else lives, the happy holidays, the what
Yeah.
are you going to do for Christmas? What are you cooking, right? They don't even live that sector, right? And
Mhm.
and they might live in a separate space of it, of just more of like family togetherness, because that's the way I look at as Thanksgiving. It's to me, it's more about family connection, eating with each other, right?
Mhm.
How do we get people to recognize that they're falling into those patterns per se, right? Like the nervous system. When does the nervous system go off, Daisy, to tell them, hey, you don't need to do that. You could create another opportunity for that gift. You can spend time with your child and go somewhere with them, right? There's so many things that you can do, but why does the nervous system keep pushing us in the direction, like you say, it's that self-worth? I know, like pleasing self-worth. Why do we keep going in that direction? Why do we keep needing that?
Yeah, I feel like for people who like stand in line for Black Friday. I used to stand in line a long time ago. I remember standing, my daughter will tell you a story about me standing in line at Office Depot. I needed that printer. It was essential. Like, but it wasn't even for her. It was for me.
For you, yeah.
Um, but when you think about the nervous system in that situation, the nervous system only goes off when I didn't get that ticket so I can get that product. That's when the nervous system is going off. It's not, otherwise, the brain is not connecting like how this is creating like um, a very like gray definition of what the holidays are. For people who just value like family and value togetherness and connection, those are the things that people want to believe in, right? And they believe that this commercialized holiday gives them that. Because if I buy you something that you really want, you're going to come up to me and give me a hug. That's going to that's going to facilitate that connection, right? That I'm looking for. But the
Yeah, it
holiday,
almost sounds it almost sounds like, Daisy, like a lot of parents who might be half parenting. I'm just kind of throw this out there a little bit as a thought. Like those
Mhm.
parents who are half parenting, kind of hover parents, maybe not fully involved, right? It almost comes down to the month of December to earn your worth with your job.
Mm.
Is that extreme?
No, not for some spaces, because there is a lot, there's kids who really deserve it, and maybe that's the only time that their parents do splurge like that. And then there's the other side of the spectrum of entitlement, right?
Mm,
where where I expect my parent to do this for me, or my guardian to do this for me.
mm,
But I think there's a big lead up, right? And I don't know how we can get away with it with the media and
mm.
all the commercialized stuff out there. Like it's almost
The
like,
sales, good sales, when there's some good sales,
yeah, are we being set up?
it feels like it.
Are we being
It's
set
like
up
a
to fall for
bamboozle.
it?
Bamboozle.
Yeah, I mean that's how I feel sometimes. Like I really haven't done Christmas shopping at all yet. So, but
But it makes me think a little deeper, if you don't mind going a little deeper. And I'm thinking of that parent who, if that's that parent who waits to December to get their worth in, right? How far is that coming back from them? Meaning, like, why do the holidays bring these kind of things up for folks? What
yeah,
is it
I mean,
about the holidays that like captures some of that maybe back in their day trauma, things that they're going through, things that were affected by them? And it could be around the season too, right?
yeah, yeah. I think the holidays is an opportunity to get back what we've missed, right? To
Mm,
get back what we didn't have, or maybe we did have it, but it wasn't delivered in a way that we would accept it. So we're trying to change that definition of it. So the holidays is like the ideal time to like test the waters and try new ways of doing things, whether it's connecting through food or connecting through gifts, right? Or acts of service. I think about how the holidays also is in the winter, and people can do things for other people who might need support, right? Um, I think parents are just really could be sometimes it could be a deeper psychological need that they have, right? When we think about trauma and we think about how we've like experienced our younger selves, we're trying so hard to either not repeat that or to do something totally left field from that, right? So that way we can develop different connections with our kids. And and honestly, like gifts and acts of service, like that's a huge thing in December, right? But I mean, some people don't want that. Some people would rather like you go to dinner with me, or you go, you come over and let's bake some cookies, right? So it really depends on what somebody considers to be a nurturing quality from someone.
For sure. And I think of also like caveat to all this too, a little bit of the society pressure, right? And I'll keep going back to the keeping of the Joneses, but even bigger than that, I think sometimes it's not even keeping up and having the same thing as someone. And I don't even think sometimes it's about beating someone per se. I think it's almost I feel it goes back to a little bit of like how we're saying how they're giving it to their child to earn that worth, maybe a little bit of that worth for themselves. So they gotta like, 2 pairs of shoes is just not enough. I need 10.
Well, see, then that makes me think about at one time I didn't have any, or at one time I only had one, and I can't let this happen again. This is not happening again. This is not happening to me. It's not happening to my child. Like I'm not going back to that space, because that space is going to activate a lot of like past wounds that I don't want to experience again.
Mm. You you hit the nail on the head, Daisy. Yes, because I set that up in a way for you to say that for me because that was me, right? Like mommy, she didn't have enough money to buy me a lot of shoes. It was 1 pair of shoes, and you better make that sucker last for the school year. Like it would, she made me stretch it, right? And there was a few times that my shoes were jacked, and it was because I beat them up. I just, I was just beating the shit out of my shoes, and I would say that followed me. It comes out of me because I am one where like if anybody, my wife, my boys, they walk in the house with some shoes and I notice they're not Daisy, I'm already like, do you need new shoes? You need me to hook you up with some shoes? Look like your shoes need new shoes.
I've said that. I've said that to my daughters. I've said that to my daughter a couple times. I just asked her the other day. I was like, "Do you need new insoles for your gym shoes?" Like, she's like, "Mom, I just bought some." I was like, "Okay."
I'm just saying, and it goes to my next thought I was gonna have with you is like how does holiday trauma show up in people, right? How does it connect to some of this excessive, maybe purchasing, maybe excessive overthinking that I gotta compensate something that I just don't even have to compensate, right? Because to me, I can give you a nice jacket, or I can call you every day and give you an abundance of love.
Mhm.
I can call you every morning and be like, Miss Daisy, I got mad love for you. Okay, bye, right? Or I can buy you a badass jacket that you can wear that you'll outgrow, eventually get rid of, right? So why are we so reluctant as humans and to kind of lean into that direction, like almost naturally defaulting over here when we really, you know what I'm saying? The
Because
balance.
it's those is tan is it's those tangible things that we can touch. I can hold it, I can feel it, I can know that it exists, right? So when somebody expresses their love or their affection or their kindness, like verbally, sometimes that could be hard to touch. It could be hard to feel, right? So a
Mm.
lot of times we look for that in like that value being connected to like things that we possess versus like things that we can feel happening between each other.
Mm.
It's a really odd thing for people who don't like really think about it all the time. But yeah, you can give me something and I'd be appreciative and I would love that gift from you because I care about you. And you're right, at some point that gift is going to the lifespan of that gift is going to
Yeah.
go out, right? But the kindness and the caring that we have is going to last, right? But it's just
Yeah.
sometimes really hard to hold on to that. We
Yeah.
need those tangible things to make it seem real.
Yeah. And as I said that, I also like as soon as I said it outward, I was like, oh, but what about the people who don't know how to love and feel love?
Yeah. Yeah.
They probably want
So,
that jacket all damn day. They're like, give me the jacket. I don't need your love. Give me the jacket. I think I can rock that jacket for at least 2 more years, right? Like, I think of that, like the folks who don't register that love part, right? How are they partaking? How's the holiday
yeah.
trauma showing up for those folks?
Well, see, and that makes me think about like how love showed up for them when they were growing up, right? Going back to some emotional intelligence and like how was love and caring and nurturing given to you? How, how was it received? And sometimes love does happen through money or gifts, right? So then that person then grows up to say, well, I haven't done anything for you lately, so I feel disconnected from you. So I have to give you something in order for me to feel like I'm connected to you or that I love you or I'm in this with you, right? So I think sometimes it really goes back to like what were the examples that they had when they were growing up to kind of
Yeah.
show them what it means to love and connect with someone. That's what I think. And the holidays is really the true like test of that, right?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
really is. Even I think about like sending someone a holiday card in the mail. Like,
Mm.
like I might know that there's a connection with someone, but for some people, getting that holiday card in the mail is like, oh my God, they were thinking about me, right?
Yep.
Um, and for some people, again, that's just giving something, right? Sending
Yeah.
something in the mail, taking the time to do an action for someone. But there can be so much distress, even with thinking about like those learned behaviors from when someone was little and how to then like pass that on to the next generation.
Yeah. Yes, Daisy. It also makes me think, right, for the intentionality of the time, and I think of companies shutting down for 2 weeks, right? Like a lot of places shut down, schools. It's so intentional on timing,
Mhm.
right? And I do feel there's a little bit of bamboozle, what we were laughing about earlier. It's a little funneling of bamboozling. I feel like it's like funneling and bamboozling. But if we capture it in a way of like how intentional this time is, and if you think of the time and everybody being off, that means to me as a family person, that means, oh, that's sacred family time. That's like,
No,
that's
you're forcing me into a space.
right. So, I start thinking of that part, like, right? How now there's some who gravitate to family is like, yes, give me family time all time. But like then I think there's some who need it in moderation, right? So is there something wrong with that? Is there someone to love? Is there something wrong with loving your family during the holidays from afar or in moderation?
No, I think about if there's anything that is happening now with the younger generation, and when I say younger, I mean like millennials and younger, is
Hmm.
understanding what it means to protect your peace, right? So like, and that's kind of pulling in some of those boundaries, right? Sometimes you have to protect your peace. And it's funny because in a lot of and I can only speak for, I mean, I don't speak for, but I can only refer to like a lot of marginalized populations, minority populations, and how like we're all about protecting our peace until somebody does it. And
Mm.
then when somebody does it, now it's offensive. Well, you don't want to spend the holidays with me? What, you ain't coming over? What's wrong? You're not coming over to eat. You're not doing that. You're not spending all day here. And it's like you still have to protect your peace. So even understanding what that means. So as a child, you're forced into spaces that you can't do anything about, right?
Yep.
as an as an adult, I could bring my own car and I can get in my car and drive away anytime I want. But that's
For
still
sure.
like right. But that still is takes a lot of like convincing in order to do, because when you protect your peace and you have that family in moderation, there's still some anxiety that happens to people with upsetting others.
Mhm.
And people are, like I said, people are all about, yeah, you got to protect your peace until that means I'm protecting myself from you.
Mm. Oh, Daisy, that was a gem. I think of the space, right? And it is a sacred space. And I do appreciate, I am one who appreciates the shutdown, like, everything slowing down and kind of, giving intentional time.
Mhm.
Because of the work I've done throughout my career, I always lived in a space where I had those 2 weeks off, right? Um, Beneficial. But I also know that it can be a little bit of it can be a little fatiguing because I think part of it is I feel all that a lot of time just even adds more pressure to some families, to some
Yeah.
folks, right? Because
Mhm.
now, usually your child's away for 8 hours getting entertained. Now they
Yeah.
home all day, right? Does it go back down for this all this sacred and intimacy I'm speaking of and how powerful it is? And then it switches to like, oh, let's put you back in that funnel where we're gonna bamboozle you, give you
Yeah.
more time off because with more time off, y'all motherfuckers need to do something. You gotta go have fun, do something. Go to the store, go to McDonald's. You're gonna buy something. Is that
Yeah.
the plot?
When you were saying that, the word that came to my mind was buffer, right? So we go to work, we go to school, those are buffers. So
Hmm.
when we get home from doing that, we got a solid, however many, 4 hours or whatever before we get to, disconnect, right? And go our separate ways to bed, right? But when it comes to like holiday get-togethers too, like the buffers are gone, right? So like we even use each other as a buffer, right? Like, what time are you
Yep.
getting there? I'm gonna get here at this time, right? I'm not going unless you're going, and
Yep.
now everybody tracks everybody, right? So I could see when you're going. I could see if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
still sitting at home, right? I'm not getting in the car because I can see you're still sitting at home. So I think
yeah.
we use each other as buffers too, because
Mhm.
when we talk about family dynamics, like not all families mesh together, and there's a lot of masking that happens in that, right? So like I'm going to pretend to be okay in this space because I know it's temporary, but it's killing me inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously with that a lot of time and knowing how much time there is, I think it can be a double-edged sword in so many ways. There's benefits to a family having that time, and especially if you have the benefit of being off and paid, right? That's a whole different ballgame for that family to enjoy, right? But then there's the opposite of everything, as you know, a family who doesn't have that resource, don't have the careers that have that time off, and have to juggle everything, and you have young ones, but you don't have money to babysit, and it's the holidays, and you got at least one or two kids who got a birthday that's near it. It's all these different things that fall into place. And then it just makes me wonder, and this kind of goes into maybe a little bit of my cynical side is like, how do we find joy in this kind of holiday season? with all of that dynamics that's happened that ain't beneficial for humans.
Well, see, I think when I think about that, I think about like somebody's social battery, right? And their ability to engage and how there's different thresholds for different people. And I think it's okay to take like a break and to say like, we're almost like, how you, well, I never did this, but some people like put their kids down for naps, right? um like it's okay to take like a break and like put yourselves down for like some alone time, right? And
Yep.
it's okay to go read that book, for kids to go read that book, or for kids to say, okay, you can have 20 minutes of screen time during Christmas Eve dinner or whatever. And give them, because as we recognize how difficult it is for us, we can't assume it's easy for everybody else.
That's right. That's so right. And I think it's you can almost fall into the space to, yeah, kind of fantasize what you think is easy for someone else.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. It's
So
like,
much masking. There's so much
it-
masking that happens, and it's just like, well, like it's okay. We like almost like families just need somebody to say it out loud.
mhm.
And then other
Yep.
people are like, oh, thank God she said that because I don't know, I was reaching a limit, right?
For sure, for sure. Well, it makes me think there's a couple thoughts I have here. We're towards the end of our segment, Miss Daisy, and I'm thinking of a few people here when I'm asking this question, and kind of I want you to give us the tangible resources, the one two tangible resources. You're going to wrap us up with with these resources, and we'll wrap up our segment there. But I think of a few people. I think of the person who's lonely who has no family, right? I think of the person who has a family but feels like they don't have a family. Right? They like live in a house full of people, but like feel lonely. Right?
Yeah.
I guess I'm pointing to the folks who might be more alone during this season, right? And I
Mhm.
know one of those, bars or expectations, almost they're very universal, right? Is don't be alone during this season. Like, oh, if you're gonna be alone, I catch myself doing that a lot, Daisy,
But some people are
right?
okay being alone.
See that? But see, my automatic, like natural, I want to love you, care for you, but like I'm coming from left field, right?
Yeah.
Here's a left field hug. Are you gonna be alone? And you're right, because I did ask a couple folks, and they were like, I want to be alone.
There's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
I'm talking about the lonely ones.
Hmm.
So for the lonely ones, for the
Hmm.
ones who are feeling that lonely, and holiday season really magnifies all this togetherness, right? All the commercials is always with a couple and a family, right? It's always one of those things. The folks who are rocking that lonely feeling, what can they do? One, to maintain some of that spirit for themselves to stay
Hmm.
healthy in a healthy space. But I guess other than that, how can they just keep that sanity right? How do they not lean so much into it where trauma is even getting more created off of each holiday that passes by?
Yeah, I would want to know like what feels good for them, because it might not feel good for them to be around family, but it might feel good for them to like go to the movies or to, you know, watch binge watch something. Like I think it's really about like their own comfort in being open to things. So they have to really define it for themselves, because somebody can be really lonely in a space and still like do things. So it depends on if someone wants to engage at all. So if we're talking about depression, right, that's something totally different. And like that's kind of where my brain goes as a therapist, is like what's happening for this person.
Yeah.
Um, but if if someone is feeling lonely, what does connection mean for them? Does connection mean that they go in a space where there's other people even though they're not talking to them, right? Like going to the movies or walking around the mall or whatever the case is, or does it mean that they have other supports in place, right? So maybe they're going to volunteer somewhere, or maybe they're going to see their therapist, or whatever that means for them. But ultimately, it's about, what does connection mean? It still means something for them. And are they able to take that step forward, right? But if somebody is sitting home alone and they are feeling lonely, and an offer is extended to them out of kindness, and they politely, refuse it, like that could cause a lot of like discomfort for the person who offered it too, right? So I'm thinking
Yep.
about both people. But I think it really, when it comes to tangible resources, it's more about defining that space for themselves. I feel like what does connection mean for them? um and if they want to just be home and be in their feelings, like that's a choice that they're going to make as well. um they just have to understand what that reflective process is going to give them.
For sure. Pivoting to a different group, thinking of the parents, right? The parents who might not have what they feel they need to provide for the
Yeah.
holiday season, right? And you're a parent. We're both parents. And one thing parents can do really well is guilt trip themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we hook them up? How do we keep them away from the guilt trip? How do we keep them more grounded and anchored into you're already giving them holiday gifts just by like your presence, just by what you provide? How do they I guess for the one, so that they don't fall into that guilt trip because they
Yeah.
couldn't capture it the way they believe they should have,
Mhm.
right? Maybe they just came up a little short, which sometimes even feels harder than like missing the whole mark.
Yeah.
What about
I
those
think
folks?
I think parents who that's it's a hard question to answer, right? Because where's the bar? Who's measuring? Like, am I
Yeah.
measuring it myself, or is the consumer industry measuring it for me, right? Or is my child measuring it? And how do I know that, right? Um, so I think for parents who are in that space, is just going back to basics. Like, what are some of the things that they felt like they needed when they were growing up, and how can they give that to their child? And maybe it's not quantity, but maybe it's quality. Like, maybe if they did buy them that, they paid a lot of money for that video console, maybe they're going to sit down and say, hey, can you teach me how to play this? And get that fulfillment in a different way. um, but I think that's really hard, because parents are going to make things happen if they want it to happen a lot of times. And I think the world just doesn't allow for forgiveness in that, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
The world is very unforgiving. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
parents do the best that they can, recognizing, like, how do I stretch this? I don't know. I can think of a lot of times where things have been stretched, right? And children are actually like, sometimes they don't really expect that out of us. So then why are we forcing ourselves to do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it
Yeah. That
takes a
worked.
it takes a lot of inner reflection, and a lot of almost going back to that inner child to see like what type of healing you need to do as an inner child in order
Yeah.
to show up the way that you want to show up for your own kids.
Yeah. That's so beautiful that you said that. And I appreciate that, Daisy. And I think about like when I think of that specific parent, whether father, mother, whichever way, right? Like guardian. I think of like so many other ways to be creative with the space to make it more connected. Like, I have three sons with my wife, and what we do every year for Christmas, we do a Secret Santa with each other. We pick from a hat and everybody, right? So that, when they were younger, obviously we bought them things like as a collective, right? But
Yeah,
there is a time and space where I feel like that consumer pattern doesn't have to live within households,
no, it's
right?
it. There's a transition that can happen for sure.
Yep.
Or,
So
and
move.
really, like, how do you? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. How
No,
do
no, no.
you
Go ahead. Go for sure.
create routines, right? How do you create like
Mm-hmm.
new like sort of I'm looking for rituals or
Rituals. Yeah.
new things that you do, right? So like whether you're putting up a Christmas tree, whether it's a Christmas tree you bought yesterday or
Mm-hmm.
one that you've had for 15 years, right?
Yep.
What are you doing with that Christmas tree? Maybe you're making some hot chocolate and you're watching a Christmas movie, and maybe that's the same Christmas movie you watch every year, and it
Yep.
becomes a way to connect and fulfill that bond and that love that you have with your children, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's things that parents can do that don't cost money at all. It's just
Yep.
a matter of believing that love can be delivered in that way, right? Going back to like things I can feel versus things I can't like literally touch.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought that back because obviously, for me, I live in a lot of feeling. Right. And because maybe I'm at an older age, I'm also at a space where, and me and you were talking before we started recording, that we're seeing a lot of people transition around our age. So for me, like give me the love, give me the feelings. I don't need no present from you. I don't I you know, I need more of that love, right? And I guess there's a point for maybe for humans in general to hit that point where they're like, you know what, I need more of this than this, right? And I know as a parent that hit me, where like, yeah, it's great to get everybody a present, but then I felt like we were being disciplined, trained on what capacity looks like, how it should be present, how big the present should be. And I'm like, what is this? Like, it
How
felt
much
like,
money you spend on each child?
yeah, it just it for me it loses all this meaning that it publicized out there in the media, right? And I feel like people lose themselves, and what I don't want to do, especially within my home, which I look at as my safe haven. It's my sanity away from the way the world is, right? When I come home, I turn off the rest of the world as much as I can, right? So my home has to have that peace. And I recognize that those routines didn't benefit that peace. It added more pressure to me as a parent. So I only say that to say that parents can think out the box. Sometimes those presents can really truly be presents because I think of, folks, and this is the next question. It's a good pivot. I think of folks who lose people, right, that mean a lot to them. And, what do they say a lot of times? I don't need no money from them. I just need them. Forget the inheritance. Give me them. I'll take them back all day, right? The presence of the person, and missing that presence. And really, what I'm trying to say is instead of missing it when it's gone, let's capture it while it's here, right? And utilize that time. So thinking of the folks who are now grieving in this season,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of memories involved in that, right? There's all these things that are kind of magnified in the back of the warehouse of the brain that comes out and rushes out, I'm sure, during the season. It does for me with my mom.
Yeah.
What about those folks, Daisy? And this is the last tangible resources. So
Yeah.
after you share this one, our segment's over. But what are for those folks who are grieving right now and kind of facing that, and it is one of those things they face during the season because it might remind them of the person they lost. I guess for those folks, how do they center themselves? How do they kind of maintain, themselves during the holiday season?
Well, I would want to know what grounds them in their relationship with that person, what grounds them in their memory, and how can they be present in that? So does it mean that they're going to visit where their physical body is resting? Or does that mean that they're making sure that they make a certain dish to eat, right? Around the holidays? Or does it mean that you do something that you used to do with that person? I would want to know, how do you ground yourself in their memory? Like, what are some of the things that you did with this person, or shared with this person, that brought you joy? And this is not to erase those bad memories or make you forget about them and make you like have this like hyper happiness. It's just to connect you to something that is 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 going to make you feel good, or feel content, or feel comfort, because our brain does this thing that it's really good at, and it's really good at remembering the bad stuff, because remembering the bad stuff helps protect us from it happening again, right? So then all of the good memories, they get stored back there, and it's harder to pull them out. So we have to be so much more intentional with that.
Thank you for sitting in with us. If this season feels messy, financially, emotionally, or spiritually, I get it. I've been there. It doesn't make you weak or behind. Do what keeps your spirit steady. Love the people you can love. Rest where you need to rest. And when it gets loud out there, come back here and ask yourself, who's helping you heal?